Tony Abbott says if Julia Gillard ignores the message from the Queensland election, the result will be repeated nationally. The Prime Minister responded to Labor's landslide humiliation for the first time, admitting she's deeply disappointed.
Visiting a local school, there were bouquets for Julia Gillard in Korea.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
But from Queensland, only brick bats.
To see an election loss like that for Labor is a deep, deep disappointment to me.
She said the voters hadn't just spoken, they'd shouted.
We've got a lot of hard work to do, for the people of Queensland and with the people of Queensland.
Milking it for all it's worth, Tony Abbott said Ms Gillard must heed the message.
If the Prime Minister's got wax in her ears, well, she'll pay the consequences.
Tony Abbott has basically been conducting himself as if he's got the next election in the bag.
And why wouldn't he after the weekend's result? Labor has clearly lost the electorate's attention and needs to do something to get it back. Something big. Ms Gillard said it won't be a change to her most unpopular policy.
The carbon tax will be implemented exactly as legislated.
Mark Riley, 7 News.
War veterans have rubbished a taxpayer-funded study that found the centenary of Anzac Day could divide Australians. The report found 2UP was associated with alcohol and gambling, and services shouldn't be gloomy.
Anzac Day, 100 years on, it should unite Australia, but a taxpayer-funded report commissioned by Veterans Affairs has found it could splinter the country. Commemorating military history in a multicultural society is a double-edged sword. It was the view of 288 people speaking on behalf of a nation, but not newcomers, it seems. Research didn't look into what recently arrived Australians would think.
When the RSL's got Japanese, German, Turkish members of it, you've got to say, hey, we're a fairly multicultural group ourselves.
The focus groups also found Anzac Day was too commercialised and celebratory. 2UP was increasingly associated with a holiday, heavy drinking and gambling.
I completely disagree with all of the conclusions of that report.
They said ceremonies to remember the sacrifice 100,000 young Australians made shouldn't be gloomy. They were worried for veterans. Do we risk holding them up and make ourselves feel good for one day and then ignore their plight the rest of the time? Indigenous Australians surveyed said Anzac Day felt like a party that we had not been invited to. Erin Edwards, 7 News.
A state funeral will be held for former AFL star Jim Stynes tomorrow morning. Thousands of mourners are expected to gather in Melbourne's CBD to watch the service on big screens. The funeral will be held at St Paul's Cathedral. The Stynes family has requested that instead of flowers, donations be made to the Jim Stynes Future Fund or the Peter MacCallum Cancer Foundation. 7's live coverage starts at 7:30am.
And coming up, the push to dob in a bully.
Plus missile threat. What North Korean nuclear tests will mean to Australia.
And the Pope's new look.
In 7's Money Watch, the Australian stock market closed flat today as losses in the materials sector weighed on the market. The ASX 200 ended down 7.6 points, while the broader All Ords fell more than 5 points. The major sectors were mixed. Materials, the greatest mover, dropping 47 points. Qantas has expanded its Asian network, setting up a new low-cost carrier called Jetstar Hong Kong. Shares in the airline rose more than 2%. Bank of Queensland remained steady, while all the major banks finished the day higher. One Australian dollar is now buying $1.05 US cents.
A homeless man has drowned in floodwaters near Cairns caused by heavy downpours. The water so far hasn't made it into homes, where sandbags have been used as the last line of defence.
I'm just waiting to be rescued. I need a four-wheel drive at the moment.
The cars come up and down and they just gush the water straight in.
24-hour rainfall totals include 360 millimetres in some areas. The highway north of Cairns has been cut by a landslip.
Families who've lost relatives to suicide are behind a push to set up a 24-hour hotline to dob in a bully. It's just one of several initiatives raised by a new anti-bullying foundation that's aimed at saving lives.
They're determined to convert this grief into momentum to stop Australia's bullying scourge. Ali Halkik's son Alam committed suicide after being cyber-bullied.
It's just very, very hard. I mean, these people are here because of our son.
The victims' families combining with police, lawyers politicians. Akut Erkan, who lost his sister Shanez to bullying, has firm ideas for the foundation.
I reckon you should focus more on getting the people that are being bullied to speak up.
Other proposals, a 24-hour Dob in a Bully hotline, an anti-bullying iPhone app, Facebook counsellors online and formal support for victims' families. Nick McCallum, 7 News.
The Prime Minister has been briefed on the threat to Australia from a North Korea missile test. It coincides with Julia Gillard's arrival in South Korea for talks with world leaders on nuclear weapons. The United States has warned our government that a test rocket will be fired next month, landing somewhere between Australia, Indonesia and the Philippines.
The advice to me is that there is only the lowest potential risk that any debris would reach Australia.
Julia Gillard says the North Korean missile should burn up in the atmosphere.
The Pope has thrilled 350,000 Mexicans who turned out to see him by putting on a sombrero. The pontiff was handed the traditional hat by someone in the crowd, so he obliged. Pope Benedict's smile was as broad as the rim as he threw protocol out the window. He also flew over the Christ the King monument, one of the most important symbols of Christianity in Mexico. Basil's here with sport and the torpedo's back, Baz.
It's how you beat the press, Rick, yes. And coming up tonight, the Eagle, who could be responsible for its return, and John Worsfold live. The coach is back. We'll ask him who's in the mix for round one. And all square, a series tie and a sensational stop.
This is NBA stuff.
Now tomorrow on 7 News, from 7:30, a special 7 News presentation, the state funeral for Jim Steins, and a reminder too about Ross Lyon, live and exclusive tomorrow night. And great news from Melbourne this evening. Wildcats guard and 7 News regular Kevin Lish has been named the NBL's most valuable player. Well done, Kev. Here are Rick and Sue. Good night.
Thanks, Baz. Perth's cheapest petrol prices next.
Then Natalia has your weather forecast.
Hello, Natalia Cooper with you. Beautiful sunshine to kick off the working week, and we're in for more of the same over the next few days. Currently in the city, it's 21.4, relative humidity 64%, and winds are from the southwest at 17 kilometres an hour. After a low overnight of 15.8, we had a top today of 26.6, and that was just before 2 o'clock. Around the metro area, Northern was the warmest spot to be today with a top of 29, 25 at Fremantle and Mandurah. Around WA, it was very wet in the Kimberley over the weekend. 90 millimetres of rain in some parts, and today there have been showers through the Gascoyne, Goldfields and eastern parts of the Southwest Land Division. Tomorrow, the risk of a storm in Kalgoorlie and Esperance, and a couple of showers expected in Albany. Over to the satellite picture now, and those showers and storms are near a broad surface trough which is lying just inland from the west coast. That trough is set to move further to the east out of the Southwest Land Division tomorrow. Interstate tomorrow, cloudy and 25 in Adelaide, a possible shower for Sydney, Canberra and Brisbane. Boating information, south to southeast winds 10 to 15 knots, tending south to southwest 15 to 20 in the afternoon, and increasing to southeast 20 to 25 knots during the evening, seas and swell to 2 metres. So the sunshine is going to continue tomorrow. We're headed for a top of 28 after a low of 14 degrees. Temperatures in the low 30s on Wednesday and Thursday, 28 on Friday, and it'll cloud over on Saturday ahead of a late shower or two on Sunday. Next Monday will be wet. And the HBF Run for a Reason is on May 27th. Free training sessions started this evening. They're happening on Mondays and Wednesdays at 5:30 p.m. on Langley Park in the city. So a great way to get fit ahead of the run. Rick and Sue.